Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the new Demon Hunter spec of Devourer is finally playable and previewable over on the Midnight Alpha, giving us a lot more information regarding this playstyle and exactly what it's looking to offer. It is a brand new ranged intellect user of a Demon Hunter spec that's still going to be dual wielding glaive, so it's still keeping up to the whole Demon Hunter glaive ideology. However, it's not really going to be using those glaives in combat, but instead is going to be casting spells from a distance. The spec is just as mobile as Havoc and Vengeance, and even has some components where you want to weave in some melee abilities and then retreat back in range as quickly as possible. And the biggest change is going to come to the new version of Void Metamorphosis, which is not cooldown based like Havoc and Vengeance, but it's more resource intensive instead. But it gives you a lot more freedom in terms of how and when you want to use that metamorphosis. So with this, I wanted to go over all of the details that we know so far regarding the Devourer Demon Hunter spec during the early alpha. Though keep in mind, everything we talk about here is subject to change, and this spec could go through a pretty wild revamp and a lot of changes before the release of this brand new expansion. But for now, we want to take a close at the early look of the spec in the early version to see what it's all about. As always, if you guys want to keep up with more regular updates regarding Midnight Alpha, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, when they made this thing a ranged Demon Hunter spec, they really leaned all the way into it. As much as Demon Hunters are used to being melee, and as much as there are some ways for you to even close the gap within melee, you are primarily a ranged class built through and through. Even your basic filler ability of Consume can be cast on the move with a 2-second cast at 25-yard range. So you're not going to have like this crazy good range like a mage would or a hunter would. You're basically in the same weird spot as Evoker, but with Demon Hunters being melee, having a bit of a time to step back, I think it's going to be easier to adapt to compared to Evoker having to close that gap while still getting a lot of the ranged mechanics. So I feel like for Demon Hunters, that adaptation to being from melee to range or mid-range is probably going to be a little bit easier. But the design is essentially a Demon Hunter that is now controlling the Void rather than the Fel. So they actually have some of the similar Demon Hunter abilities like a I-Beam of sorts, as well as Immolation Aura and other effects, but they have a new twist. They're similar to that of Havoc or Vengeance, but they're not quite the same. So there's going to be a little bit of this like unique tinge that Devourer specifically has compared to the other two specs. Like I mentioned, we see some of the basic abilities and their animations. Consume is a pure ranged ability with the ability to cast on the move. It generates Fury as well as Soul Fragments, which would be two resources that you'll get to utilize. Kind of very similar to how Havoc primarily uses Fury, while Vengeance will use Soul Fragments. This one combines them two together and really evenly utilizes both of them for offensive power. Then you have abilities like Creep, which is a way for you to be able to consume soul fragments once you generate them. And the more soul fragments you can generate, the more AoE damage this ability is going to do. This is going to be one of your main core skills that can be enhanced greatly through a variety of your different talents. And then of course you have the big ability of the Void Ray, which has pretty long range and also consumes up to 100 Fury. And the way this ability functions is it'll either end after 3 seconds of channeling or upon you reaching 0 Fury. And there's some ways for you to be able to modify this ability, especially during Metamorphosis, in order to no longer consume Fury, but instead it'll actually be used to delay drain of Fury. So it'll be an offensive ability, a core skill that many of your hero talents and other passives rely on. Many different talents can modify Void Ray to give you a lot of resources. It'll be a huge ability, but it's also super flashy and really awesome to look at. As for some of the unique talents that I really want to take a look at is the Soul Immolation, for example. It's not really like an immolate to hurt others, it's more like a self-immolation to generate Fury as well as shattering soul fragments over time. It has a minute cooldown, so it'll be a lot longer than how Havoc or Vengeance uses it. Yet another example of them doing something different while having very similar abilities. And there's also ways to modify it to give it a second charge, so you can use it for resource generation, or potentially just giving your abilities a chance to apply Soul Immolation on you automatically. Another unique skill that I noticed with the Devourer Demon Hunter, I guess the Dev Demon Hunter spec, is Sunder, a minute cooldown ability that allows you to devour the life of your target to make yourself whole, dealing cosmic damage equal to a portion of your missing health, up to 25% of your missing health, while healing you for half of your missing health. A big heal ability that just takes a huge chomp out of the target, and is going to be a unique way that it looks like Dev Demon Hunters are going to have a self-heal component from a distance. Of course, there's also the big one, Void Metamorphosis, which functions completely differently. Collecting 50 soul fragments actually grants you access to Void Meta, so it's not going to be something you'll be able to use immediately. While Void Meta is active, it'll slowly drain your Fury, but certain abilities like Void Ray and other skills will be able to delay your Fury drain or lessen it. So it'll be mostly just a battle of resources as this spec, where the other two have Metamorphosis as a 2-minute cooldown to use defensively or offensively. This spec is going to have a little bit more flexibility, but it's really based on how many of these soul fragments you're able to generate and collect before you even unlock Void Meta. And then the question is, how long can you stay in that Void Meta? And I think there's going to be an opportunity for skill expression. And you'll try to use every tool in your kit to try to stay in that meta for as long as possible, which we've seen those playstyles in the past, like Demonology, Warlocks, or Warlords of Dreador, and maybe even Mists of Pandaria use a Fury system with a very similar mechanic. At least in Mists of Pandaria, I know they did. But then Legion Shadow Priest also did the same thing with their Sanity generation. They tried to stay in the Insanity Void form for as long as humanly possible, and the longer you stood in it, the better the benefits. But it got progressively harder as as every single second ticked out while you were in that powerful form. Now, the huge ability for Demon Hunters, the Void Demon Hunters, is going to be Collapsing Star. While in Metamorphosis, every 30 soul fragments harvested gives you access to Collapsing Star, which allows you to channel this massive ability that does a ton of damage and even has some crit scaling with the Apex Talents of Midnight, but it allows you to just do a bunch of damage. This is going to be the big, flashy, amazing looking ability, but it also is something that helps you delay the Fury drain, and something you'll want to keep casting continuously, as it apparently builds more damage the more you use it. The big nuke ability that you're just gonna have to play around with pretty aggressively. Now, with it being a ranged Demon Hunter, they do have some melee components and even some combo abilities as well. As a dev Demon Hunter, your baseline is always to be in melee and to rush at enemies, chasing after them. This is why they have so many abilities with mobility in mind. And one of the ways they'll be able to use one of those skills that's core to the other specs is a version of Fellblade, be it the Void Blade, which allows you to rush to your target so you can still chase them. And even abilities like the Hunt will have a very similar mechanic of being able to get in melee to do some damage, but you're encouraged to still chase after your target. Once you rush or the Hunt towards a target, that ability transforms into a Hungering Slash, so there's a ton of AoE damage, generates a bunch of Fury, and generates a bunch of Soul Fragments, which can be huge if you end up playing a playstyle heavily revolved around Soul Fragment generation and usage. Afterwards, after using the Hungering Slash, it'll also give you an extra charge of Vengeful Retreat to be able to dip out into range immediately, so you can rush in, do AoE damage, back up out of there, and go back to doing mostly range damage. So it seems like it'll be an ability that you'll weave in. For PvE content, it looks like it might be something that does AoE damage, or possibly will be used for resource generation. For PvP, this could potentially be a great way for you to chase after the target to position a little bit differently, rush in, do a bunch of damage, Vengeful Retreat in a better spot to make sure that enemies can't hide away from you. And weaving in those melee attacks seems to be potentially one of the ways that you'll be able to incorporate it through some of the different talents, though depending how strong those talents are going to be by the end of the development cycle, it'll be interesting to see if they'll actually have any value or if they'll fall off where you'll just have primarily full range builds as dev, I was about to say Evoker, but dev Demon Hunter. From the preview that we've seen so far on the alpha, it doesn't look like this spec has a lot of abilities either. Like if you're looking at, let's say, Havoc Demon Hunter or Reg Demon Hunter, and generally back in Legion, those classes didn't have way too many abilities. It wasn't the most complex specs to play. They had some nuances for sure, like with abilities like Momentum, Inertia, things like that. There's definitely a little bit of this using movement to empower yourself for damage. That definitely takes a little bit of skill. But this one in particular, this spec seems a little bit more straightforward with abilities. It seems that it's going to have major core abilities like Void Ray, Rape, Collapsing Star, and a lot of the talents are going to fuel those core abilities without really giving you too many new tools to overwhelm you with buttons. It's a trade-off from just getting new abilities that have additional effects to just getting talents that make those core abilities more complex, more unique, and help you structure build where you lean into, let's say, one ability a little bit more heavily, or into another, depending on your hero talent choice that you pick up, whether you're the new Annihilation Meteor build or the Scarred with a little bit more of this melee void like explosive power. And with this spec in particular, and maybe this is just a change to the metamorphosis, it does seem to be a little bit less cooldown heavy. There's not as many cooldowns that you gotta overlap within a very short window like Havoc Demon Hunters usually have to. This one gives you a Void Ray, Metamorphosis, which you have a little bit more control over when you use it and how long you could stay in it, as well as it looks like the Hunt and maybe like a self-heal ability, but the rest of it looks like it's going to focus on the core skills that you'll use in day-to-day combat more than anything. And it looks like it's a direction that a lot of other classes are actually moving into Midnight, so it's not really anything that's a slight against Demon Hunter specifically, but it is just seems like it's just the way the direction the game is going in general, and this class is like the embodiment of that direction as well. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like, so it's very, very much appreciated. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any new Midnight or potentially new future content updates for whatever we have left over with the War Within. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.